Find something safe to play with, please. What? No. Find something safe to play with.
Nobody was supposed to see this. No announcement, no rollout, no warning. And yet, somehow, one quiet move just shook the entire hip-hop internet. Because overnight, a secret Drake x Lil Wayne collab didn't just leak, it forced a reaction. And not from fans, from Birdman. Think about that for a second. When was the last time Birdman reacted publicly to anything, without control? Screenshots started flying, timelines started connecting dots, and suddenly, one simple question took over social media. Why did this collab happen in silence? Was it just music? Or was it a message? Because within hours of the leak, Birdman dropped a single line online, no names, no context, but everyone felt it. And that's when things got uncomfortable. Fans started digging. Old interviews resurfaced. Past tensions didn't feel so past anymore. And then Drake responded. Not directly, not aggressively, but clearly enough that nobody missed it. So now the internet is split down the middle. One side saying this is about freedom, the other saying this is about control. And the most dangerous part? No one's denying anything. So the question isn't what leaked anymore. The question is, what just broke, and who lost control first?
You know who Baby was? He's a millionaire from the streets. And in New Orleans, you know, that name way before there was rap, before there was a Cash Money Records, that name held weight. You know, my mama went to school with him. My mama was so scared for me to even be involved with him. Wow. You know what I mean? All she would say was like, boy, that boy was 14 with $1 million. And she was scared of.
Once that line hit Birdman's Instagram, everything shifted. No caption, no emojis, no explanation, just one sentence, cold, calculated, and heavy enough to make people pause mid-scroll. And that's when fans realized this wasn't some random late-night post. This was a response. Because within minutes, hip-hop blogs started refreshing their feeds like something bigger was coming. And honestly, they were right. See, the Drake x Lil Wayne collab didn't leak the way music usually does. No snippets, no studio selfies, no working on something special captions. It surfaced quietly, through insiders, through playlists being edited, through back-end credits popping up where they weren't supposed to be. Industry watchers noticed first, then superfans, then everyone else. And the same question kept coming up over and over again. Why was this happening without Birdman? For years, the narrative had been clear. Even when relationships cooled, the power structure stayed the same. Moves like this didn't just happen in silence. Which is why Birdman's reaction didn't feel emotional. It felt strategic, almost like a reminder. And suddenly, old stories didn't feel old anymore. Clips from past interviews started circulating again. Moments where people joked about permission. Comments that were laughed off back then, but hit differently now. Fans began connecting dots that may or may not even exist. But once the internet smells tension, logic stops mattering. Some claimed this collab had been in the works for months. Others said it only came together after a private fallout nobody saw. Anonymous accounts popped up saying things like, "This isn't about music. This is about leverage. This was always going to happen." And then came the theories nobody could prove, but nobody could ignore either. Was this collab a power move? A quiet declaration of independence? Or just two artists doing what they've always done, without asking? The silence from Lil Wayne didn't help. No denial, no confirmation, no playful tweet to calm things down, just silence. And in moments like this, silence speaks louder than any statement. Meanwhile, Drake's camp stayed unusually quiet too. No press release, no clarification, no "it's all love" energy, which only added fuel to the fire. Because if there was nothing to see here, why let it burn? Comment sections turned into battlefields, one side calling Birdman's post a warning, the other calling it insecurity. People weren't even debating facts anymore, they were choosing sides. Freedom versus control, legacy versus evolution. And buried underneath all that noise was a much bigger question nobody wanted to say out loud. What happens when the system realizes it's being bypassed? That's when things got even stranger. A few hours after Birdman's post, industry pages started hinting that more was coming, that this wasn't the only reaction, that this story wasn't done unfolding. And just when the tension seemed like it couldn't climb any higher, Drake finally spoke. Not in an interview, not in a statement, but the same way Birdman did. One line, carefully chosen, impossible to misread. And once people saw it, there was no going back to pretending this was just about a song. Because now it wasn't about what leaked, it was about who felt challenged, and who didn't feel controlled anymore.
I ain't never took from them. I always blessed them.
But why niggas keep saying that? You know what I'm saying? Why niggas keep saying that, bro? Like everybody, producer, all these folks be like, man, they don't pay, bro.
Right, bro. I had some incidents early on.
Yeah.
Because I was really young and I ain't know no better.
Drake's line didn't sound angry. That's what made it dangerous. No threats, no names, no explanations, just a sentence that landed like a match in dry grass. And within minutes, the narrative flipped. Because now this wasn't just Birdman reacting to a leak. Now it looked like Birdman was reacting to being left out. Blogs started rewriting headlines in real time. What began as secret collab leaks quietly turned into power struggle, silent fallout, lines crossed. And that's when the internet did what it always does best, dig. Old footage resurfaced again, but this time people weren't watching for nostalgia. They were watching body language, tone shifts, pauses that felt longer than they should have. Fans zoomed into moments that had never mattered before. A look here, a comment there. Suddenly, everything was evidence. Anonymous accounts claiming industry ties started posting vague threads. Nothing concrete, just enough to make people uncomfortable. Statements like, some people don't like surprises. Some moves aren't meant to be approved. Not everyone wants permission anymore. Nobody confirmed anything. Nobody denied anything. And that silence, it screamed. Because if this was harmless, why let it spiral? Meanwhile, Birdman didn't post again. No follow-up, no clarification, no attempt to cool things down, which, according to longtime observers, was the loudest response possible. People familiar with his style said the same thing. When Birdman talks once and goes quiet, it means the message was delivered. That's when speculation took a darker turn. What if this wasn't about one collab? What if this was about setting a precedent? Fans started asking questions that didn't have easy answers. If artists don't need approval anymore, what happens to the structure? If moves can be made quietly, who actually holds power now? And maybe the most uncomfortable question of all, what else has been happening behind the scenes that we haven't seen yet? Because industry insiders hinted that this wasn't the first time something like this almost happened. It was just the first time it leaked. Allegedly, private conversations, unfinished plans, projects that never saw daylight, all the things that don't make headlines, until they do. Drake's silence after that one line only made things worse. No interviews, no jokes, no smoothing it over, just business as usual. And that calm confidence, it made some people nervous. Because confidence like that doesn't come from guessing, it comes from knowing. Fans started revisiting Drake's past moves, how often he's played the long game, how rarely he responds emotionally. Some said this was chess, not checkers. Others said it was accidental chaos. But one thing became clear very quickly, whatever this was, it wasn't small. And it definitely wasn't over. Because when power gets questioned, even indirectly, it doesn't disappear quietly. It waits, and everyone watching could feel it. Something else was coming.
Like a kiss thing going on.
Facts. I know you got a child, you probably kiss him. You probably got a son, and you kiss him.
Yeah.
You heard me? I always looked at Wayne as my son, and I always looked at it like, because I was in the streets, and I thought this might be the last time they ever see me. That's where that came from, started from, and I always today look at Wayne as my child. I was his father when he didn't have a father, since he was 9 years old.
Right.
And I love him like my own, and I give my life for him, and I'll take a life for him.
By the time people realized this wasn't dying down, it was already everywhere. Timelines, group chats, reaction videos stacking on top of reaction videos. And the scariest part, nobody involved tried to shut it down. Because normally, when a rumor goes too far, you get a statement. A source, close to the situation, some carefully worded cleanup. This time, nothing. And silence at this level doesn't feel accidental. Fans started noticing patterns that felt intentional. Playlists updating, subtle lyric captions, old collabs quietly getting reposted. None of it loud, all of it deliberate. That's when people stopped asking if this was planned and started asking how long it had been planned. Because here's the thing nobody wanted to say out loud, moves like this don't happen overnight. They happen in private, over time, with trust, which raised a new question, one that made even loyal fans uncomfortable. If this collaboration could happen quietly, what else could be happening without permission? And that's when the conversation stopped being about music and started being about control. Some fans argued this was overdue, that artists grow, that systems change. Others saw it differently. They saw lines being crossed, rules being ignored, power being tested, and Birdman's earlier posts suddenly felt less emotional and more strategic. Not a rant, a reminder, a warning dressed up as a quote. People went back and reread it with fresh eyes, and the tone hit harder the second time. Not anger, authority, as if to say, you can move, but movement has consequences. Meanwhile, Drake stayed quiet. And that quiet didn't look nervous. It looked confident, almost like someone who already knew how this chapter ends. Industry watchers pointed out something subtle but important. Drake never argues in public unless the outcome is already decided. He lets conversations burn themselves out, or expose themselves. And as the debate raged, one rumor refused to go away. That this wasn't just a collaboration leak, it was a signal. A signal that certain doors no longer need to be knocked on. A signal that loyalty doesn't always mean obedience. A signal that the old balance might be shifting. And once that idea took hold, there was no putting it back. Fans split cleanly down the middle. One side calling this growth, the other calling it betrayal. Both convinced they were right. And maybe that's the point. Because the most powerful moves aren't the ones explained. They're the ones that force everyone else to explain their position. By the end of the day, the internet wasn't asking whether the collab was real anymore. They were asking, who knew first? Who approved what? And who just realized they don't have the same reach they used to? No answers came, just more watching, more waiting, more tension hanging in the air. Because when nothing gets denied, it usually means the story hasn't finished writing itself yet. And everyone could feel it. The next move wouldn't be loud. It would be calculated.
Say, Stunner, what you gotta say?
Hey man, like, I ain't gonna even lie, bro. Like, when I met Blood, you know, I just was trying to do something different in the game. I had started this shit young. I was a young man trying to get some money and not be in the streets. And I met BG, I met Wayne, I met Juvie, I met Turk. Shout out to Turk, you little bitch. You ain't here, but f you. We gon' f with you when we won't f with you. You heard me?
Don't go off script.
We gon' f with that bitch when we won't f with it. But that's another movie. But ain't no, you know, Cash Money. When one died, I ain't gonna say died, cause we lost a lot of soldiers. But Cash Money ain't built on. You leave, you can't. We gon' still multiply.
Let's go.
Cash Money ain't gonna never die. As long as I'm alive, hold on, Fresh. Wait for.
So now the question isn't what happened. The real question is, what happens next? Because once lines like these get posted, once silence starts speaking louder than statements, there's no rewinding the tape. This isn't just about one collab. This is about power shifting behind the scenes while everyone's busy arguing online. Was this a quiet rebellion? A calculated chess move? Or the beginning of artists finally stepping out of shadows they didn't choose? And let's be real, if this is what leaked, imagine what didn't. That's why this story doesn't end here. It pauses, right before the next move. So I wanna hear from you, no filters, no fence sitting. Do you think Lil Wayne made the right call? Was Birdman sending a warning, or admitting fear of losing control? And is Drake stirring chaos, or just saying out loud what the industry's been whispering for years? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, the industry is watching the reaction just as much as the rumor. And if you think this ends quietly, you haven't been paying attention. More leaks don't get announced, they just appear. So if you don't want to miss the next twist, the next quote, the next move that changes everything, hit like, subscribe, and turn notifications on bell, because around here, we don't wait for the truth to be handed to us. We catch it the moment it slips. And this story, it's far from over.